found AHO Radio. We're authentic human outliers coming together to help heal the fear of being authentic, to bring back genuine human conversation. No hype, no sensationalism, just honest talk about the critical issues affecting society, affecting humankind. And now, here are the hosts of AHO Radio, John Krotec and Bill Protzmann.
John Krotec, greetings from the leftmost corner of these United States here in San Diego. How's everything in Florida, buddy?
Hey, man, I'm on the left coast, west coast too, I guess. So whatever you want to call it, you know, we're here and we're celebrating things.
Wow, you're celebrating this thin blue line running behind you.
Yeah, notice the thin blue line. You know, there's a lot going on, and there's a disclaimer for this poem. I just want to first say that, you know, I respect law enforcement.
Absolutely.
They have a tough job to do. There are so many men and women all across this great country, the United States of America, that do the right thing. And like at any organization, you're always going to have those that don't. And we're witnessing right now with George Floyd, you know, the aftermath that's still going on. You know, it's horrific. I don't condone any kind of violence, any kind of stuff that's going on right now. But you know, we witnessed, let's get real here. We witnessed the murder of a man of color, a black man.
By
a cop. And you know, and anybody that knows the coloration change in skin, the man on the ground skin, his head got darker. It was filling up with blood. He couldn't breathe. The guy could have just taken his knee off, and the people that were standing around could have done something, and they didn't. And so my poem today reflects my position in poetic manner of what I think needs to stop. And the culpability for these things that happen don't just end with the 4 police officers that were dismissed. There's a problem in the chain of command somewhere, in a hiring process with his buddies around. Hey, listen, I'm an Army veteran. I understand chain of command. We know who the bad seeds are. And something needs to be done. The beta males in these organizations need to speak out, and or the leadership needs to change. You know, I understand this guy that did this crime has had a history of police brutality and an interaction with the public less than stellar. That guy would never even, he would have never lasted 1 minute in my private business. The minute he, you know, was rude to a customer, I would have fired him. So here's a public servant. The minute that he's rude to the general public, that man's got to go. I'm sorry, he's got to go. And so I'm not angry. I'm not indignant. I'm just, you know, I'm baffled how these toxic masculine police officers get to stay in these organizations.
I'm with you on the disclaimer, and I'm going to back you on that, because the objective here is to promote thought and to get people thinking and engaging in a new way, rather than to throw more fuel on a fire. That's not our purpose, people. Our purpose is to give safety to you if you're thinking about these things, to have an authentic place and to sort of hear an echo maybe of your own thoughts and feelings about this. So it's called Toxic Masculinity Wears a Badge. Let's hear it, man.
Yeah, thank you for that. Toxic masculinity wears a badge. Fear drags its knuckles. Sometimes it hides behind a tin badge, carries a taser, uses a need to end a human life. It knows no color, takes no prisoners, deals out death in the name of public service. Their faces are a damned lie, spreading their evil, such diabolical hatred, spilling killer sin onto the many, all of us. I cry out to the masses. We, the people, do have a say in this senseless charade played by the uniformed men who are weaklings, just like some of their mindless, hateful leaders pointing fingers at subordinates. It's a leadership problem, ladies and gentlemen. In the poem, I know it hits hard. You know, I don't want to get anybody angry that wears a uniform, But this stuff doesn't just start in one day at one event. This is a trickle down effect. The leaders in that organization in Minneapolis know that this is a bad cop. He's a bad cop, ladies and gentlemen. Check his record. I don't know how else you could be said anything else. I pass no judgment. I just look at his record. And when you look at the video as a human being, regardless of your race, your color, whatever, it's just wrong on so many different levels. And excuse me, Minneapolis, but that whole chain of command needs to go. That's my opinion. The great thing about the United States of America is we're entitled to that. So I think we have a systemic problem, and all this does is create a negative. This creates more hatred for the men and women, a majority of them doing the right thing, serving the public, out there on the front lines. But because of guys like this, it creates trouble for all of you.
It turns me back to my own stuff. Like when I show up, I don't know what I'd done if I'd been a spectator there. I don't know. I probably would have done something, at least created some awareness. But in my own stuff. So if I'm showing up and I'm not all I want to be, I've changed my perspective so that when I show up in a place, I'm owning the baggage I bring with me, and I'm curious about whether the place or the situation or the opportunity will help me to shed some of that baggage. Open it up, take a look at what's inside, maybe toss away the stuff I don't need. So I'm looking at these events, big or small, as opportunities for me to look inward and say, what about me isn't right now? What is it that really is hurting right now? And then how can I transform that? How can I change that? And to watch another person die is huge.
At the knee of a law enforcement officer.
In any situation, I mean, if you're in combat and a buddy dies next to you, or you can't save them, this is a traumatic experience. Watching someone die, even someone who's close to you. I've never been able to be present for the passing of a family member, but I have. My daughter has, and I know other people who have been there. You know, when my mom and dad passed away, and that changes you. It can be a positive thing if you approach it with a sort of inward look and saying, what is this event bringing to me right now? And you might feel a bunch of hatred. I mean, I do. I can't watch the video. People have told me about it. I can't watch the video, but I feel just so deeply this sense of hatred and this sense of compassion at the same time. It's like these two feelings that are opposite come into me. And what do I do with them? That's the real question, right?
Yeah, that is the real question. And and what's even worse, if you watch the video, I've watched it twice, is the law officers that are standing around. And I call them beta males because that's what they are. They don't have the cojones to stop something like this. And I know that the police officers deal with dangerous situations. But come on, the guy was on the ground, handcuffed. He was defenseless.
Yeah, we're smarter than this, right?
And you're beta males. Yeah. You're beta males.
Now, John, let me ask you, because I understand chain of command too. We had this whole thing with Crozier and that stuff. But I read a book by Malcolm Gladwell long time ago, where one of the object lessons was, why did this seasoned pilot fly a Boeing 747 full of people into the side of a mountain? How does that happen? And what they basically discovered was that there was a chain of command issue. The second officer didn't want to impugn the skill and dexterity and knowledge and experience of the first officer. So the second officer, who knew the plane was going to hit the mountain, didn't say anything, kind of out of respect. And that's an oversimplification, people. But does that kind of thing hit in the military, in the Thin Blue Line Corps? Is that a factor?
It is, and in chain of command, there's atrocities always whenever there's war, and some people call it the fog of war. And there was something that happened in Iraq with one of the paratroop units, the United States Army. I'm not going to go into detail, but basically some soldiers got drunk and did things and killed people. There was rape involved, and they killed some people, and they were brought to justice. But you didn't see you know, there was an outrage, but it wasn't anything kind of like what we're witnessing now. But to get back to the point, somebody there should have spoke up and said something before it got to the level of terror that it got to.
Even a subordinate?
Yes. I mean, somebody should have said something or knew something about these guys and what they were doing and what they intended to do before they went out and did it. And again, I don't know all the details, but I do know that that leadership, it goes down the line, it goes up the line, and we call it down the chain and up the chain. It's this constant communication. And we used to get in the military, I'm sure they still have it. We used to get NCOERs, non-commissioned officer evaluation reports. And we used to get them fairly often. And, you know, the units that were really good were ones that followed the rules and went by the book. And you could tell the difference between a unit that was on top of their game and one that wasn't. And the reason why you're on top of your game is because of your leaders. This police officer was not on top of his game. He was brutal. He was probably not following department rules. When a person, he's supposed to protect even these criminals, right? But when a person tells you they can't breathe, and you're hurting their neck and they're incapacitated, wouldn't it make sense at a common sense level somewhere to lift the knee? This guy evidently thought that what he was doing was okay, and it didn't matter because his chain of command was going to probably give him another pass. And what I'm saying is the time of giving these type of toxic, masculine police officers, and no matter, even if they're in the military, the time to give these guys a pass is done. It's finished. Now, when you're in combat and you're fighting a mortal enemy, it might be a little bit of a different story because there could be a real fog. But this enemy, if he was an enemy, he was just a guy who I think had passed a bogus check or something. It wasn't like, you know, he had held a knife to a kid's neck or something. But regardless, it's got to stop. And it starts with leadership. So what's the solution? Well, when people come up 3 times with a bad NCOER, they don't get promoted or they get canned. Remember the movie Branded, or the sitcom? No, it wasn't a sitcom. It was a long time ago, Branded, when they rip off his epaulets.
Yep.
They break his sword, they toss him out, and he had to live with that brand for the rest of his life. Well, you know, that's what needs to happen. The days of being politically correct in the police corps is done. And I'm talking about inside the ranks.
Yeah.
If you know, I implore any female or male police officer, detective, wherever you're at, if you're working next to somebody like this, you might be out on a call with them and they might do something very similar. And then what are you going to do? Yeah. And if you're a leader of a guy like this that kills somebody on a video, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You got to change. You have got to change. You've got to get what I would consider a rogue cop. And not only one in this one, 4. 3 other guys are standing around doing nothing. Yeah. So the solution is to get leaders that understand what integrity and core values are for serving the general public, to serve and protect. That was anything but serve and protect. And I got to tell you right now, Colin Kaepernick, I gave that guy a hard time. You know, may not have been the right venue to be on a knee at a football game, but the statement that he was trying to make now, I will stand up, or sit down rather, but be vocal about it. I get it, Colin Kaepernick. Yep. I totally get it. And I'm white and I'm mad about it because something does need to be done. And unless we start sticking up and saying what's right and coming together, then what's happening in Minneapolis and Denver and maybe even in Houston, things like that may not happen. It's time for justice. It's time to clean out these toxic cops and clean this up. We just witnessed another thing in Georgia, recently, where wasn't a policeman, but it was a pass cop. I don't know what his history is, but they ran down a guy and shot him. I mean, come on.
What's people?
This is America. I could imagine, I'm not black, but I could imagine that in some communities in America, A black law-abiding citizen man could walk down the street doing nothing but living his life, that he could be putting himself in danger.
Yeah.
What we just see that happened in Central Park, where a white woman accused a black bird watcher, of all things, of assault, trying to assault her, and she got fired. I mean,
she was arrested.
Oh my gosh, we need more of that. And if you want to start race baiting and playing the race card and all of this, Black Lives Matter, listen, all lives matter. That's the other side of the issue, of pulling the race card. I don't know if that guy's a racist, but I do know this. He is a killer cop.
And get this, man, we could take this topic and really blow it out, because the people in the world who practice compassion need to figure out how to be compassionate for the cop that killed this man. That's the calling if you're into compassion, people. And that's a tough one. That's a really tough one to figure out, you guys.
It's tough to be compassionate, cold-blooded killer like that. And somebody that should have been stopped months or years ago. So yes, you're right, Bill. That's a great point, because somewhere in your heart, you got to forgive the guy. He's obviously some troubled individual, and he's got a family of his own. And, how would he feel if somebody did that to somebody that he cared about? And so
exactly,
it's just a mess, but the mess can be cleaned up. We do have a mind, and we do think, and we can make things happen. But I think it starts in the leadership and in the hiring practices, in the vetting practices. I don't know if it's a psychological evaluation. I don't know if it's a whistleblower thing. I don't know. I know what it's like to have, well, you have to have cohesiveness in a unit. And I know what it's like to cover for your buddy. But when you're covering for your buddy that's doing something that's integrally wrong, then honestly, the way I feel, this just came from my upbringing, you're culpable. You're part of that problem. If you witness something happen like that guy that was there, that was looking right at the camera, oh my gosh. Anyhow,
give us the poem one more time, man.
Yeah,
to lock it down, and we'll wrap it up.
So thank you, Colin Kaepernick. I never thought I'd ever say that, but thank you for pointing out an issue that we kind of know is there, that's kind of festering. But man, this is like it. And I hope that my poem strikes a nerve, and I just hope that it's something that we can all think about. And it's time to come together, really.
Yes, sir.
So let me see if I can just boot this up real quick. Anyhow, thank you for letting me share, Bill. And I know I know that we're passionate, but this is something we need to be passionate about, because I have great respect. I have so many friends. The sheriff of my county is a good friend. And I know damn well that he doesn't run his sheriff's department like that. It just doesn't happen. It's a tribute to him and all the people that wear the uniform here, but something's got to change up there. Here you go. Toxic masculinity wears a badge. Fear drags its knuckles. Sometimes it hides behind a tin badge, carries a taser, uses a knee to end a human life. It knows no color, takes no prisoners, deals out death in the name of public service. Their faces are a damned lie, spreading their evil, such diabolical hatred, spilling killer sin onto the many, all of us. I cry out to the masses, we the people, do have a say in the senseless charade, played by the uniformed men who are weaklings, just like some of their mindless, hateful leaders pointing fingers at subordinates. Yeah, it's a strong statement, but come on, leaders, clean it up. Let's get these rogue cops off the streets. You got a dangerous job. I support you, but it's got to change. Thank you, Bill.
Brave man, John. Thank you for your courage and your words and this poem. And together we can do this, everybody. We can make a difference. We can.
So keep walking the thin blue line, and our hearts and prayers are for the families, both sides of this, and for all those people whose businesses are being ruined. Hang in there. This will turn around. Thank you.
Thank for joining us on this episode of AHO Radio. Information we mentioned is probably in the show notes, but if we missed anything, please let us know and we'll get it added for you. Subscribe to the AHO Radio channel on YouTube to stay connected, and, as always, we wish you health, success, and significance. AHO!
AHO!